I think in what we've witnessed as an industry and within business circles in last 18 months is truly unprecedented. For the first time, we saw the entire industry being divided into essentials and non-essentials. And most traditional organizations looking to pivot towards reaching out to their consumers through a kind of digital transformation, which is unprecedented in many ways. So marketing automation somewhere has been the key across all areas and in all industries. In fact, just to quote, even tech-heavy industries have been quoted by saying that they've seen a digital transformation and automation, specifically in terms of consumer journeys and marketing in last 18 months, which is much more than last 4 or 5 years that I have witnessed. So I'm sure there are very varied experiences that you would have in this journey. So starting the discussion with Priyank, Priyank represents us with one of the very exciting industries within e-pharma space with Tata 1mg. And Priyank, to open the discussion of what we have seen, the digital opportunity that businesses have seen in last 12 to 18 months. And I'm sure there is a complete digital roadmap and a complete strategy to consumer acquisition, which has changed tremendously in the last 18 months. What's your sense on looking at the entire piece of marketing automation when you see it with the experience and learnings of specifically last 2 years?
Thanks, Harshvardhan, for this wonderful question. In the last couple of months, 1.5 years, you can say, with COVID coming in and with this huge pandemic, we have seen a huge change in the shift of consumers. If I specifically talk about the healthcare industry, the consumer who was very much into offline, preferred to take the medicines from the offline shop, now is very much into the digital space and are very much comfortable into ordering online. And we have seen a huge shift for that, and we have seen a huge growth in that. And Tata 1mg is a pure digital brand, and many other brands which were into offline now is moving into a digital space to acquire the customers. Coming back to your question, I think, Harshvardhan, marketing automation with a standpoint view of Tata 1mg, which is a digital brand, plays a very, very important role. Marketing automation helps the marketeers like us, or the growth managers and the growth persons, to reduce the manual effort that is being reduced, and we are also saving a lot of cost to bring the maximum ROI. Couple of examples I can quote for marketing automation that in Tata 1mg we are using. We are using Tata 1mg marketing automation in engagement a lot. So sending emailers, SMS, push notifications in a silos manner is not making sense for a marketeers like us. Sending all these communication in an integrated journey and in an automated fashion, which is very much personalized to the consumer behavior, to the purchase, to the past consumer behavior, makes more sense for the companies like us, and it gives us the best-in-class ROI also. We have also introduced more ordering channels like WhatsApp. WhatsApp integration is one of our major key lever for driving customer acquisition for the labs business, where a person can come onto the WhatsApp channel and can order seamlessly. So I think these are the two just broad examples I'm giving to you. But marketing automation is very much important from the marketer's perspective, because it gives us that particular desired results which we were unable to do while doing anything manually.
Absolutely, Priyank. I think very insightful. The learnings are very clear from what you said. I think the entire consumer journey, right from acquisition to adoption of the products and services to retention, is getting data driven. And with MarTech tools, the area of opportunities to continuously optimize as you leverage newer platforms, as you said, in terms of leveraging WhatsApp as not just a messaging platform, but also to deliver business results. So I think very clear that martech tools are enabling the productivity and data-driven approach of the entire strategy that businesses have to consumers. Great. Moving on to Pawan, I think Pawan, you've been part and veteran of a very exciting industry, retail, which has seen a lot of changes in last 2 decades, and specifically with pandemic coming in, I think, and how the entire marketing technology and digital transformation has impacted a B2C industry like retail. I'm sure you have learnings across the journey of the adoption of martech tools and digital transformation, and how that has impacted businesses. So, Pawan, what's your sense on this entire change that is happening, which martech tools are bringing in towards not just transforming business result, but also enabling marketers to optimize their entire strategy to become much more data driven? And any specific learnings that you would want to take us through, specifically in the pandemic times?
Sorry, I think I was on mute. Thank you very much for the question. As you know that the biggest thing in retail is actually, if somebody comes to the store or comes online, as long as you can identify the customer, as long as you can identify their needs, and as long as you can, serve what the customer is looking at, I think that's the highest level of personalization what you can do. I think during the pandemic, that's one big change which actually came into retail, right? Earlier, pre-COVID, I think as all retailer, we used to work in a program like a loyalty program, right? Which is typically to kind of incentivize customers to come back again. And we used to work in a kind of a cohort, right? Build a couple of kind of cohorts and kind of address it. But in today's world, when it's omni-channel, right? I think that's exactly what COVID brought it in our life, and it just became reality. I always say this, that omni-channel was always like a boardroom discussion. Post-COVID, it just became reality for everyone. So I think that's the biggest change. And what some of these platforms, what they do is actually they can help you to personalize, create cohorts. You'll exactly know how many people are actually coming online, going to offline. So there is one sense and one lens in which you can see your customer. And therefore, I think all the matrices from whether bringing in lifetime value point of view, you can really pull that from the customer. I think that's number one. Number two, I personally believe that no online business can work if you don't have retention strategy, right? I mean, otherwise it's too expensive to bring the customer to engage and buy online if you don't have a retention strategy, whichever tool it may be. I mean that I leave it to marketers and different teams. But without retention, it's impossible to sustain. I mean, that's my larger point. And therefore, we need to create frequency. We need to be, knowing the customer really well. We need to understand, what the customer needs and personalize it as much as possible, and ensure that, the customers within your ecosystem, and without any of these tools, or I don't think it's possible. So that's my larger take and larger learning during the pandemic.
Very rightly put, Pawan. I think what you said is speaks about the entire transformation that has come in. I think the entire narrative is changing from just reaching out to consumers, which has been the traditional marketing and advertising approach, towards martech tools now bringing in much more sensitivity towards matrices, as you said, towards optimizing customer lifetime values, looking at retention, and making the entire acquisition funnel much more sustainable. So I think there's a lot of productivity that martech tools are enabling marketers to improve. Moving on from there to Rupali, I think Rupali has been leading the entire digital transformation at Dr. Reddy's, and closely seen, especially in pandemic times, the impact that martech tools have brought in, especially from a data-driven approach, as Priyank also mentioned, Pawan, towards deeper personalization and much more movement that we've seen as an industry towards leveraging artificial intelligence, machine learning, and looking at customers in a much more personalized, humane way rather than mass approach of one size fits all. So from your experience, Rupali, take us through how marketing, technology, MarTech, as we say it, and digital transformation has been transforming at Dr. Reddy's, and what's been your overall experience in terms of the entire change that is coming in?
Yeah, absolutely. And first of all, thank you so much for giving me this platform and learning from all of you and interacting with a wonderful audience out there who must be sort of hearing us and watching us. See, in my view, if I take a retrospective, view at did we really change or did we progress ahead when it comes to marketing transformation or a core of marketing, right? So I believe to keep things really simplistic rather than getting into a complex, journey of stitching journeys and stitching identities and developing those ID graphs and profile graphs. For me, it's fundamental that know your customer, right? And the plethora of MarTech tools. So way as back as in the year 2011 when the MarTech word got coined, 850, barely about 850 tools, around then. Switch to 2022 or 2021 when we are, as in the beginning Anisha mentioned, about 8,500 tools now in the market to pick from, right? What have changed really, as rightly mentioned by Pawan in the previous talk, that marketeers are very keen in understanding customer, more proliferate with the proliferating data sources, many data signals and behavioral signals. What is happening here is, and I think COVID and the entire pandemic wave has propelled a much more attention, as you mentioned by you, that MarTech was there even before the pandemic. But the focus on to understanding customer, creating those sophisticated, omni-channel sort of experiences around the, needs and wants and aggressions and apprehensions of customer has improved. And it had gone to another extent of, advanced level when we are talking about now how machine learning can start predicting or let's say forecasting those behaviors, right? So for me, well, I'm with Dr. Reddy since first year now, and half of my pandemic life I was there with Vodafone. So it's more of from a B2C, it's cut to the B2B. When it's a B2C, it's more of acquisition, retention, churn, lifetime value, and blah blah. Cut to the pharmaceutical sort of marketing when it's more of relationship-based marketing, demand generation, and creating those lead gen sort of programs. Of course, omni-channel around the stakeholders, the key customers, which is our customer. Now, for me, pandemic has been a biggest, I would say, a paradigm shift in terms of how marketeers fundamentally see at MarTech. So marketing technology, rather sitting aside as a silo shop, had become a core of marketing. Why? Because the customer behavior has changed over the period of time. So the trends at which we used to speculate customer behavior, that X person will pay his bill only in the morning or in the night. However, the customer started paying off his bill in the middle of, let's say, his working calls like 10 a.m. or 11 a.m. The prediction used to be earlier that if it's audio sort of programmatic, it has to be only effective only when person is commuting. So there's no more commute. So everyone is binging on to OTT. Everybody is binging on to all this audio and media entertainment. And when it comes to pharmaceutical, it becomes far more complexer, because all of a sudden, all physical interactions with the HCPs, healthcare professionals and doctors came to an end, and we pushed to become a very virtual company, which is not, if you look at historic how pharma business model works, right? So as a healthcare, what change I've seen is we were physical, we end up becoming a digital, and then from digital, we end up becoming a very phygital sort of organization. So today, even if the market has returned to a BAU sort of status, The calls are happening, medical field representatives calls are happening, and then all of these personal touch is coming back between the human to human interaction. Still, a digital been given a prominence to be seen as a very prominent, cornerstone when it going to have an impact on how doctors, or let's say the core key customers by and large, would start consuming the content online, or will start coming on to digital world again and again to fulfill whatever that customer behavior he would leave behind. So for me, because the customer behavior has changed, they had been, as I heard in one of the Adobe summits, that somebody said that we are living in age of convenience, expectations, and relevance. So until unless you are not fulfilling these three buckets of communication with the customer started seeing you as a brand irrelevant. So if you are an irrelevant sitting pocket, it's very much indeed become a need of an hour for a marketer to start thinking about customers, as I mentioned, behaviors, needs and wants, ethnography, aside demography, his psychography, his behavioral signals, all of it came all of a sudden onto the plate. And to decode that, a lot of tools came into the market, like a lot of platforms in terms of CDP, push notification, you name it, programmatic, push notification, predictions, AI, ML based, algorithms and so on. The marketeer's jobs become really complex then, to pick the right one, to carry the pressure of the improved, increased, incremented KPIs that we carry, to establish the business impact of the tech investments that we often do. So it went on becoming complex here in my view. But however, as Priyank and Pawan has rightly pointed out, there are use cases and there are revenue streams and the ROI that can be established using the right methodology, right way of impacting onto the business value chain overall. And then at the end of the day, customer is the key, right? I mean, the customer centricity is something which should be a key component when you talk about marketing. So I used to tell this to my team often, right, that till the time you do not have absolute focus on to what customer really wants and how he's behaving and reacting to your offerings, even in terms of content strategy, right? You should have absolute focus as to how customers pattern or customers journeys are showing that patterns to you. So there where I think a lot of transformation has happened. Thankfully, Dr. Reddy's, as you mentioned, always remain ahead of the game with the deployment of right technology at the right time. We use AI, ML, automation sort of technologies at a scale, even to predict to some extent how the communication sequencing should be between multi-channels. So say if it's a inbound and outbound channel, which is your email, SMS, WhatsApp, push notification as an inbound, and then programmatic DV360, display, video, shopping, gaming, etc. as an outbound. We actually plan content per channel using a lot of AI capabilities in-house. And then on top of it, we also we conduct something called fatigue analysis, because see, pharma marketing, human reactions and human relationship becomes really critical. So are we not, bugging our doctors too much? Are we not making them burn out with the large plethora of documents and the reference articles and the communication that would go from the brand? So we conduct this kind of fatigue analysis and all. So yeah, as I mentioned, with the as Pawan mentioned, right, the omnichannel become really a core of everything that we do. And omnichannel is nothing but the phygital experiences that we create for our customers. And that just not in pharma, but I think many digital native industries, or let's say for that matter, my ex-employers, telecom, even what they offer online, it should translate well into their offline, and the offline offering should, translate well into online. So all these online, offline ecosystem is what marketeers would then, drive using a lot of marketing capabilities, in my view.
Absolutely, deeply insightful, Rupali. I think you've taken a very elaborate approach on explaining the various nitty-gritties that you've seen from your experience. That and very rightly said, as you put in, the world is becoming increasingly digital, and martech tools essentially are allowing businesses to serve consumers at the cusp of physical and digital
Yeah,
as they remain truly omnichannel.
absolutely.
Moving on to that, I think to Abhina, I think I'm equally excited, Abhina, on one of the industries that you're currently into. We've seen one of the biggest digital transformations in fintech, and how financial technology and the entire financial industry has touched consumers through deeper personalization, through the whole battery of martech and digital transformation, not just from the erstwhile primary financial products that they used to serve, but we have seen very evolved products and deeper leveraging personalization to target consumers with very hybrid products. So I'm sure you've seen the entire journey of martech tools and how that have been transforming specifically within the COVID period and 18 months. Abhinav, take us through that learning of the martech evolution that you've seen from your lens.
Thank you, Harshvardhan, and a pleasure to be part of this eclectic panel. Uh, transformation has begun not just like before COVID. Also, the same story was there for all of us. Trying to implement what COVID has done is brought the discussions from boardroom to ground offices, right? The brand channels, like we have a huge network of brand channels, their voices started reaching to boardroom, and that marriage happened, which was always a gap. So earlier, the onus of taking all the stories to the boardroom was of marketer, because there was only one guy or a person, right, uh, who was talking about customer, their pain point, their stories. What pandemic did was brought this bridge. That is the first step that brought in, and everyone at the boardroom to solve these problems started bringing in suggestions of bringing in new tools, because all of us, as humans, believe new shiny toy syndrome, which I call, right? That new iPhone is going to solve all my management problem, till the time it's also filled with same set of photos, not managed properly. We start the new phone with a lot of process that I will be very structured and come back. So what at Bajaj Capital we had, is a very interesting problem. We had 41 lakh clients, right? Primarily offline. And I take a lot of pride when I tell people that Bajaj Capital has 9,000 clients, which are 90-year plus and still transacting. 9,000, because we have been there for generations. Now, when we started doing, the first thing I realized we had to do was do design thinking. So I got all my team to do a design thinking course. I already had done that experience and asked people to do discussions with clients on Zoom and customer, and it became very easy because there was not much to do. We were all figuring out. So earlier we could do design thinking, and we actually could realize that there is a lot of generational shift that was happening, and we could figure out like there is an uncle generation. Now, a Gen Z told me that there is an uncle generation, and it has nothing to do with age. Uncle generation had to do with how they hold the mobile. So they hold the mobile like this, and then they press like this. We press is like this, right? But the uncle generation actually holds a phone, and it changes because they have a phone, in hand with a specs. So this will have a bifocal lens. So they see it like this, and then they see, and then they press. So this guy who was trying to see his SMS OTP, the classic case we have where OTP comes, the message says enter the OTP in the transaction. Now enter it in 1 minute. And 40 seconds have gone and the OTP has not come. Right? Now this guy is worried. So the moment that 1 minute happens, he presses resend OTP, and suddenly another OTP comes. Now this is the first OTP actually, right? Because that's the ecosystem, how it was. Now the moment he copies, and everyone remembers 3 digit, most of the people that we have talked, they remember OTP, 6-digit OTP in 3-3 format, like 531-116, right? So they remember, they read 531, go back to that browser on their mobile device, and they have forgotten, they have gone back, tab tak dusra OTP aa gaya. These are the critical, and I'm telling you the micro problem, and not just for a 90 plus, a 45-year-old also is struggling through same thing. And we have, we have been there for wealth for generations. So suddenly this guy was saying, send yaar check blaze day, because these are HNIs and ultra HNIs. Yaar, send somebody to collect check. No. What are you asking me to do? Why? I have never done OTP. Right? Because they don't need to. They have been working like this, many of them, right? To a transition today where they say the whole game of show me my portfolio detailed report and tell me whom I can discuss on a video call initiated on your platform, right? This is the change that has happened. Why it has happened? Because to connect to their, relatives abroad, they have learned tools. They have adopted tools. They find no problem now in adopting any tool unless it is easy. So we have to tell. So the whole structure of finance was opaque. Everybody wanted opaque because the more opaque you are, there is more inertia. And in finance, and especially in investing world, you have to save a customer from himself or herself. Because if you actually keep your money in a mutual fund, just an example, for 20 odd years, there is no reason why you will not be a crorepati. Almost all will give you, right? 80% of them. The problem is the moment I go down or up, I start tinkering because I get something called tip, right? Because I talk to my friends, I have that FOMO. So what digital can do is, and we could be able to implement, we actually launched most advanced, analytics report of investment for India, which is bigger than the banks. So Bajaj Capital beauty was we were third party. So if a bank has to sell an insurance product, he has to sell, or they have to only sell their own insurance product. HDFC cannot sell a ICICI, which may be excellent for Rupali, right? But Rupali being a HDFC customer will only get HDFC insurance, right? Bajaj Capital could do so as being a third party. So the whole MarkTech implementation first came into understanding that the whole need of customer is not just to know where their money is, but to be able to take aware call of what they are doing in their investment. And that's where the whole transformation happened. And to do this, we needed communication. And that's where the MarkTech tool started coming in, right? What it required, and we talk a lot about capability building and the tools, and we are enamored by tools. And I started by saying the shiny toy syndrome, right? What it requires is on ground mindset change, which is tough. That person who is always used to taking 20 printouts and putting it into a beautiful colored and going to a client and discussing it of how they should do their investment is suddenly asked to take his phone and he says, "Mera font chota hai, samajh nahi aa raha." So how do you build in? So what we did was to process. So I had the product piece for Bajaj Capital as well as the marketing piece for Bajaj Capital, and offline, online both. So what we could stitch together was a narrative where feedback started coming in and we could start doing communications that was well intended to particular persona of the audience. We have not used very heavy AI ML. We have realized, for reaching out to new customer for newer base, and AI ML implementation works very good. But when it is for existing customer, I really loved what Rupali said, fatigue analysis. I would really like to do. I was calling it a silence period, do not disturb zone for my customers, right? So we actually built in the systems where on these times you cannot call, send SMS or message the customer under any conditions. And we actually ask them, can you prefer this? But the whole answer is at times customer need the right nudge. We don't provide nudge to customers. We have said we will not provide nudge to customer. So another thing in the mindset that we actually could do, Harshvardhan, is go back to our values and say that all my implementation will go through this lens of values. Like we had a huge debate of should we start crypto marketplace also, or an NFT, because a lot of HNIs wanted that in our system, and we consciously said no, because our research said we will recommend AAA. The value system of the company read that long-term deep relationships for the customer. So this could be brought in, and that made us select very different set of products to deliver this. And it might not be something which we will get benefit right away, which we have got. We have got a raving success. We have launched a new business called retirement planning and a complete digital tool. And we do a webinar. You won't believe we have reached almost 1 lakh retirees in last 1 year. 1 lakh. These are 57, 58-year-old attending my webinar, listening to me on Zoom. We thought we will never be able to reach them. Because the product, if your delivery is good, if your product is good, and you are able to communicate right, you are actually driving a huge lot of business value using these tools. So that has been the learning, in a nutshell. And obviously, all of us have huge lot of stories, but that's what has been the mindset and the capabilities between looked from the lens of what the company really wants to do for long term.
Absolutely enriching, Abhinav. I think what you've put forth is the sensitivity that we are getting throughout this digital transformation journey in terms of understanding and identifying customers in much more personalized fashion. I think all the examples you've talked about, right from the generational shift and how technology is adapting rather to the entire change across the spectrum of consumers. I think there's a lot that we can expect, what I believe, and it's only the tip of the iceberg, which Rupali also mentioned, that we see in the entire digital transformation or MarTech journey. Now, as we are approaching with the paucity of time, I think one of the big things on every marketer's mind, and marketing even as a function, or is transforming not just from focus towards acquisition and retention, and of course with MarTech and digital transformation helping with a much more data-driven approach towards that, but the entire function is evolving into more of a growth function. So starting from Priyank, what would be your advice to marketers when they are dabbling their MarTech journey and building their acquisition and retention strategies in terms of how should they go about it as they endeavor the entire function into a growth?
Okay, so see, acquisition and retention, and then I think conversion definitely is an important life cycle or important journey for any marketer, whether the organization is into offline space or into an online space. And with Tata 1mg, we are primarily into digital space. This particular journey is very much important. I think couple of advices, since you've asked like what are the advices that you want to give. Couple of advices that I want to give is that, first of all, understand your customer in depth. It's very important that you should understand the pulse of the customer. Who is your TG? So it's not like defining a TG like we have a 20-year TG, we have a 30-year TG living in metros and all those. No, not like that. You have to understand your TG persona in detail. That you can take help from multiple data management platforms, what we call it as DMP, where you extend your where you extend your customer database and you get a more enriched data about your customer. So understand your customer well. Then only you will be able to acquire that particular customer in the best possible channel. Second piece of advice is that data is the fuel of any marketing or any stage of marketing we'll talk about. Whenever you do any campaign to acquire the customer or to retain the customer, keep a very strong eye on the data, whether this particular acquiring of a customer is fruitful for you or not, whether this particular customer is a customer for a short season or it's a customer who will give you a long LTV, what we call it is a long-term customer lifecycle value for the marketeers. So please keep an eye on the data, because data is something which will tell you the exact scenario. The data will tell you the exact ROI of that particular campaign, of that particular channel that you are using, or that particular MarTech tool that you are using. And last but not the least is that be connected with your customers. It's very, very important that you should be connected to your customers. When I say connected, it's not like we have acquired the customer, we have retained the customer, now the customer is retained for 1 or 2 months, now it is gone back to our competition. Not like that. You should be connected to your customers, understand what customer wants. You should definitely interact with your customers either physically or through digitally. By using some MarTech tools, you can do certain surveys. You should understand what the customer, how the customer buying behavior is changing, what customer requirements is being changed now. All those things is important, because then only you can tweak your marketing strategy on a month-on-month basis, and you can get a best what we call it as ROI or the ROAS for the marketing spend that you are doing. I think these are the 3 advices that I would like to give to the marketeers from especially from the customer acquisition and the retention perspective.
Great, Priyank. I think a lot of deep learnings into what you said. It comes from the larger experience and wisdom that you've collected from the usage of the entire MarTech journey. But very rightly put. Pawan, moving on to you. For marketers, what's that big advice that you would give from your experience as they dabble the MarTech journey, especially managing difficult goals of not just acquisition, but retaining and maximizing their customer lifetime value? What would be your big advice to marketers who are taking up this journey?
Great. I think 2 things I would like to say. One is I think the full funnel needs to be seen from a customer view. I think many a times marketers just become obsessed about the bottom funnel and put in all the energies there. So I think top funnel, mid funnel, and bottom, all of them are important. I think content is important because this is what you're communicating with your audience. There is always be a cycle in which the customer gets converted. So I think content is equally important. Lastly, I think personalization. Think like, how can you have one-on-one conversation with your customer? I know it's easier said than done. It sounds very philosophical at this point in time, but I think that's another thing which should be created out of some of these tools. So I think these are the 2 things I'm going to suggest all the marketers.
Absolutely, Pawan. I think personalization is that tops it all. Rupali, what's your one big advice to marketers in their MarTech journey?
I think Priyank and Pawan has really well captured whatever advice pieces of 2 cents that I would probably give. The only thing that comes into mind that is easy to spend money and buy tools and have it as a tech investment. The other day I was speaking on the forum with TCS and the Microsoft. And the question was, how do we mitigate the risk that will come after the investment into technology, and how will you mitigate those risks, right? Being a financial burden. The investment into technology, or let's say into a MarTech tools, many MarTech tools, would only become a burdensome only if that's not really weaved in a core of your business use cases. So fundamentally, you should have absolute focus on to what exactly the marketing is trying to achieve. Having said that, each business comes with its own flavor, its own personality, its own objective list, what they want to really achieve. So many times we get into a boardrooms and we say, hey, the company's senior leadership wants to understand how marketing investment or MarTech investment per se would bring a value to the table. What would be the business impact? How should we see? Will it be incremental or will it be a surplus? So my answer to this is, be it acquisition, retention, blocking churn, improving your product or technology specific features in the product that you operate, and you build that business model around, or delivering something which is more, more incremental CSAT or your NPS score. You want to improve the customer satisfaction overall. Whatever the use case may be, you should have absolute view as to how that use case is weaved into your business organizational goals and the business targets. That's number one. And number two, what exactly will drive and will fit into that bucket of which use case. So I mentioned about Vodafone, right? I worked in Vodafone, and then previous to that I was part of Z. Every business in my career so far of the past 15, 18 years or being a marketeer had bring me to the point to understand that every business has its own challenges to deal with, right? And then those challenges really became an opportunity if you take it through the lens of marketing, saying, hey, if this demand generation is something which I'm to address, I will deploy 1, 2, 3 use cases as a campaign objective. And as Pawan has rightly mentioned, I'm fully agreeing with him because I have myself firsthand experienced it. Keeping a full funnel in view is it's absolute fundamental, and it's absolute critical at the same time, because no use case will work in a silo. You cannot say that, boss, I am running a customer acquisition use case, so I cannot do a retention use case. Marketing is everywhere, and data is everywhere for that point in time, right? So it's all fundamentally works across the funnel. That is typical your awareness, consideration, action, that is awareness, consideration, conversion, and advocacy sort of funnel that you build across marketing. And then each layer, what sort of use cases you will fit in, and how your MarTech ecosystem will enable a lot of data, transition and transfer between the two, and how then you can end up establishing value out of your tech investments. This is how, at a strategy level, I've seen organizations not doing pretty well. My piece of advice here is, first of all, do not live in silo. Become a fabric of the business. Become a marketing fabric of the business. Always have a seat of a data analytics whenever you are discussing new campaign. There should be absolute clarity as to what this campaign is, what it will bring, and what success metrics would be, and how will I measure it, and how will I keep on improving it, right? And third and important thing is, even if it's tech investments, as Abhinna mentioned rightly, right? Capability building is never-ending game. So keep learning, because the industry itself is very dynamic. There is new tool every other day that is launching with new algorithm and new set of features, and the skill set which requires is diverse. So keep learning and do not leave your learning hat aside just because you say, yes, I have arrived, I have learned everything, now I'm there. It's not that. You should be learning all the time.
Thanks. I think rightly put, very rightly put, Rupali. We'll keep it very crisp with the paucity of time, Abhinav. One big advice, especially as marketers, the new marketers continue to double the MarTech journey. We've had a lot of learnings right from suiting it to the business. What would be that one big advice that you put forth?
One big advice is focus on two things. One funnel is data, AI, mix it with intent, right? The second is do not let go your brand, your emotion, and your customer journey, which is target buyer journey. That's it. That's
absolutely crisp. Very crisply put in. I think that's a deeper message. Very enriching. I had a very great discussion with, and a lot of learnings, even personally, from this very marquee panelist that we had today. The message is very clear. I think as we move towards a more phygital world globally, and consumers become more omni-channel, MarTech is providing a very valuable opportunity, not for businesses and marketers alone, but for the entire ecosystem to bring in much more personalization, data-driven approach, look at the entire machinery as a deeper growth function. And I think in all this pursuit, we have a bigger opportunity to build much more purpose-driven brands. So I think that's the big learning and opportunity that we have. With that, I think over to you, Anisha. It's been a great discussion and a lot of learnings here.
Right. The discussion was awesome. And we have one question that is coming for Abhinav. So very quickly, Abhinav, if you could answer this question. How is design thinking helping your business to create differentiation from competition?
We are able to, through design thinking, we are able to unearth those pain points which customer is facing right at the moment of decision making of doing transaction with us or not. So when we go down and we see where they are dropping off, which is a classical case, everybody see Hotjar or implementing a lot of tools, seeing where they drop off. The big challenge that comes is you never get to know why. With design thinking, you actually get to know why then and there. So like every team member have to do at least 2 interviews with the customer who have done transaction and 2 who have dropped off at various stages. Every team members of mine, both in the marketing one and in the product, they are able to then identify right there what was the message that went wrong. So before AI ML can actually feed in, create a analysis, we are able to actually bring that small nudge. Like I will give you a very small example and wrap this. We could use a very common tool, Provely, right? What it does is tells you automatically on top cities where the transaction is taking place. So we were saying that people used to do the transaction, but during the check upload they used to wait. So we use that tool. We send them the message there that Mr. This of this age have just uploaded the check and his investment has started towards his dreams. When we did that, that drop off of check upload actually stopped, because this guy thought, I am also 45. If a 47-year-old is able to do it, I should also be able to do it. So we nudged them right there and learned this design thinking process, because he said, Ek bar, let me get a check back, let me find it. So we could build those, understanding while doing a design thinking right away.
All right, Abhinav, thank you so much for explaining to us how you're using design thinking in your marketing plan. In case you want more clarity, that is Mr. Sahu, please get in touch with Abhinav directly. I'm sure he'll be happy to explain this better to you. I would like to thank all of you for taking the time out and joining us today and sharing with us your views on the tools that are required in today's day and age for a marketing mix which is successful. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Stay connected. Bye-bye. Take care.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Have a good day.